Well, we are rapidly approaching the crucial date of December 15th as it pertains to the NBA trade market. Of course, the actual trade deadline is until February 5th, but December 15th is so critical because it is the magical date when all players who signed new multi-year contracts in this past offseason become trade eligible. And ESPN's ace NBA reporter Shams Charania is reporting that the Dallas Mavericks are set to be a seller's team as we approach this trade deadline. Most notably, they will be exploring fits and options to ship Anthony Davis out of town.
The trade talks to some extent will occur.
And there are reportedly several Eastern Conference contenders who are pretty interested in AD's services, that being the #1 seeded Detroit Pistons at the moment, the #4 seeded Toronto Raptors, and the #9 seeded Atlanta Hawks. And I guess the only real question is why? Look, there is no doubt that Anthony Davis is an absolute stud when and if he is ever healthy. He does, after all, have 4 first-team All-NBA selections, which is as many as players such as Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, and Steph Curry. This guy has 4 top 4 Defensive Player of the Year finishes. He is 4th all-time in NBA history in player efficiency rating, behind only Nikola Jokic, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James in that order, while he is just above Shaquille O'Neal. Yes, there is no doubt that AD is elite when AD can be on the court. But well, therein lies the problem, because that isn't very frequently, especially not as of late. This is a guy whose entire career has been marred by injury, who can barely stay healthy for any significant stretch of any season. If you can guarantee that you would be getting, say 2020 AD, then of course you would rip this trade, but there is absolutely no assurances. Just look at the Dallas Mavericks. Why don't we? He has played, Anthony Davis has, in only 19 total games for the Dallas Mavericks since they shipped Luka Doncic out of town for his services. And Luka Doncic, speaking of him, well, he's not exactly a modicum of health either. And for context, for how ridiculous those 19 games played for AD is, Luka has now played in 45 games for the Los Angeles Lakers since that trade occurred. So again, why? Why would anyone be willing to give up viable assets? If we're just talking fringe role players, expiring contracts, future assets, fine. But viable assets? Keep in mind that AD does make $54 million this year, $58 million next year, and he has a $62 million player option in the following season. But just for this season and for purposes of this trade deadline, you're going to have to somehow match the $54 million contract of AD to precipitate this kind of a trade. Now, assuming the Detroit Pistons can't even get there, which they do have Tobias Harris on the contract book right now. He's making $26 million this year in an expiring contract. So he likely would be a player that the Detroit Pistons would build a potential package around, at least for purposes of salary matching. But even assuming that the Pistons can get there, why would they want to for Anthony Davis? Again, they are the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And does Anthony Davis even really fit in on this team? Detroit has Jalen Duren, who looks to be a rising stud. I don't think he's going to win Most Improved Player this season, but he's likely going to finish top 3 in that category by season end. He's averaging 19 points per game and 11.5 rebounds currently and shooting 66% from the field. Does he even fit next to Anthony Davis, really? Also, the Pistons are already an elite defensive team. They've been top 4 in defensive net rating all season long. So it's not like AD is really a floor riser for them on that side of the ball. And again, all this assuming that AD can even get on the floor in the first place. No, of the teams that have been speculated to be interested in Anthony Davis's services, the one that is most intriguing to me, makes the most sense, is the Atlanta Hawks, who have the expiring contract, $30 million for this season, of Kristaps Porzingis. They also have Trae Young on the books, who, while his contract isn't expiring, he does just have one player year option left next season. He's making $46 million. And these are two players in Porzingis and Young who really haven't been contributing much to Atlanta anyway. Kristaps played in just 13 games this season so far, while Trae Young has played in only 5. Atlanta, meanwhile, does possess control of their future draft picks as well, so this team, to me, makes sense. You also have Jalen Johnson, who is transforming into an all-NBA second-team selection, in my estimation, by season's end. This team defends. They're long, rangy, athletic. This, to me, would actually make sense to kind of take a gamble and a risk on Anthony Davis, particularly because where exactly is Atlanta going anyway? Again, they're currently in the 9th spot right now out east, so they are just a play-in team right now. If this does materialize, you take a gamble on AD, and he can stay healthy. The Atlanta Hawks, you could be talking about potentially winning a series come postseason, or maybe even 2, with how wide open that Eastern Conference looks. But without doubt, the big crowned jewel of this upcoming trade deadline, and one of which we will be speculating for months of where he will be going, there will be several teams, probably like 25 teams, putting together their best packaging to try to lure Giannis Antetokounmpo out of Milwaukee. Look, there has been lots of trade speculation surrounding the Greek Freak for several years now, but it looks actually like the tides might finally be right for Giannis to move on from the team that he has called home for his entire NBA career. The Bucks are middling and spiraling down the toilet drain right now. He's out indefinitely currently, and they now have lost 10 of their last 12 games. The writing is on the wall, and again, probably every team in the NBA is going to be having meetings over the next several weeks to determine what kind of a package they would have to give up to potentially bring in Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think even the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are 23-1 right now, will be having real and viable conversations within their front office. Again, and that Oklahoma City Thunder team, actually, scarily enough, can likely produce the best package for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So just imagine that, bringing in Giannis to a team that is 23-1 and dropping him in the middle of a big three that contains Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen Williams, as if the Oklahoma City Thunder didn't look unbeatable enough. That would really shake things up throughout the NBA. The team, though, that makes the most sense to me has got to be the San Antonio Spurs. They have a nice little mix of their own assets in terms of their upcoming draft picks, as well as young rising studs and assets already in their organization. Just a matter of who they're willing to give up, but probably the prospects of pairing Victor Wembanyama and Giannis Antetokounmpo on a front line is just going to be too mouthwatering for the Spurs to pass, though the potential health of this pairing is no slam dunk either. Again, Giannis has been banged up the last couple years. He seems to miss long stretches of time at the most inopportune moments. He is out again indefinitely right now. It looks like 2 to 4 weeks, and somewhere in that ballpark right now, or that vicinity, with some kind of a calf injury, which he's had a couple calf injuries, which are obviously scary because those lead to Achilles injuries. But then again, Victor Wembanyama isn't necessarily inspiring you either in terms of his durability. He has played in just 12 of the 23 games for San Antonio this season, that coming on the heels of a year last year where he played in only 46 games for the Spurs. And look, all of this assumes that you can send a guy in February to some team and that will automatically transform them into some kind of a contender. That obviously is very difficult to do. When do we ever see a guy going somewhere in the middle of a season and going on to win an NBA championship? It's very rare. Yes, it did happen for Kawhi Leonard and Toronto several years ago, but well, that was only because of injury to the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals round. So just sending any player in February to any team doesn't necessarily make them a contender. Obviously not with a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder sitting out there, and even more established teams like the Denver Nuggets and Houston Rockets. But it certainly will be fun to watch as the trade market generally heats the NBA hot stove up like none other. So guys, please do make sure that you are subscribed with notifications turned on to stay up to date with me on all things that are NBA. Until next time, guys.